good afternoon. Those were two outstanding presentations and really highlight kind of why these conferences mean so much both to me and our firm, and I think to so many people in this room. We all spend so much time with our heads down really trying to solve the problems right in front of our faces. It's so interesting to me to see how other people solve such utterly unique problems that exist in real estate and development. It's really kind of perfect. So thank you to those two ahead of us. So Jds Development is a development and construction firm based in New York City. We're currently doing about 4 million square feet of development in New York and various boroughs and in Miami. It's currently valued at about $7 billion. And the interesting component about JDS is that about 10 years ago, we took one of our projects to the construction market and found that nobody in the construction industry really wanted to build what we were coming up with from a design standpoint. So by necessity, we built our own construction firm. That firm exists today and is the company and people that built American Copper and everything else that you'll hopefully see in the years to come. So the team of the American Copper buildings of 626 First Avenue that you see on the screen is first and foremost shop architects. Obviously the design architect, the architect of record, and doing the interior design. WSP, the structural engineers that are really the only structural engineers that we would be so thrilled to work with on a project like this. Bureau Happold doing the MEP and facade engineering. Scape doing the landscape architecture, and then K&Co also on the interior design. So as you can see from the slide, 626 sits on the East River in Manhattan. The Empire State Building behind, and this isn't a gratuitous New York City shot with Empire State Building in every single one. This is about showing a new face of New York. And so many pictures of New York have been the face on the Hudson River side from New Jersey. And this has traditionally been the back of Manhattan. And when we looked at this project, which you can see a little bit better here, this was traditionally, the second side of New York, but it's the side that faces Brooklyn. And as some of you that live in New York know, the entire waterfront over the last 10 and even 20 years has been transitioning from piers and highways and industrial ports to what it should be, an urban coastline. So many cities, Chicago being a really good example, embrace their coastline. People live and work on the river and on the lakefront here. It's the same thing in New York, and this project was all about embracing that waterfront from the very beginning. So let's talk about where this project actually is. So this is from this is about a 100-year-old map of New York City, and this is our project site, prominently located in the East River. Properly in the East River. So before we started building piers and reclaiming land around Manhattan, this is now 36th Street, 35th Street, the FDR, and First Avenue. So while this isn't kind of a location that many people know about, this is a 10-minute walk from Grand Central Station. So this is prime real estate in the best sense, underutilized land in every respect. So when we started looking at it, we said, what is the benchmark? Context is everything for JDS. When we're doing a renovation, we want to understand the history of what we're working with and make sure we're tremendously respectful of what exists around us. We love New York, and we're not trying to change it too much. We're trying to just push it into the next century. But when we were looking at this site, where I said there's virtually nothing that was existing, what we realized is that everybody passes this site. So these arrows show that everybody goes up and down First Avenue, up and down the FDR, up and down the East River. People wait for hours trying to get into the Midtown Tunnel, staring at where this building is going to sit. So we wanted people to experience this building from a sense of motion. We wanted people to understand it from different aspects. And that was our baseline that we started with shop architects, and Gregg's team really kind of figured out how to maximize that. So this was our starting point. Actually, this is a little into it when we're starting to dig our foundation, and we'll get into that more later. But it's an L-shaped site, and it started as a gravel lot, again, right on the river. So as soon as we started going down, we were into the East River. To Gregg Pasquarelli.
So the project came with a pre-existing zoning envelope that had been done a decade before. That was a little bit tough because it put a public park on the northeast corner, sort of behind a 43-story building. So it was meant to be built around a public school that had been built. We had a west tower and an east tower, and our client said, "Listen, we don't want to change the zoning envelope, but can you push it as hard as you can to see what we can do here?" So we had this kind of generalized envelope that was pretty restrictive on the height. And so we said, why don't we just take the standard floor plate and inscribe it from one edge from the west to the east and back to the west, and take the other envelope and inscribe it, the floor plates from the south to the north and back to the south again, to get this kind of sculpted version of it. And then we had to build this public park on the northeast corner, but we said, let's also make a kind of community for the entire building and bring it together by putting this bridge between the two, so that instead of having two separate buildings with two separate amenity packages or split amenities, let's celebrate the kind of new community of the 770 apartments and bring it together across this bridge. And then also we moved all of the mechanical equipment to the west tower and used the bridge as a kind of extension cord to plug in the east tower, and therefore cleared all the mechanical off of the east tower's top to also make a second amenity space on the roof. And so here you can see the bridge that we sort of envisioned as this kind of glass element floating between the two buildings at the point where it gets closest to each other. And again, working with Bureau Happold and WSP, fully modeled. The really tricky part here was the mechanical systems with the building sloping in the two directions. And then the idea was to sort of take the south and north facades and make that a solid material and open up the east and west with all glass. And and with many of our projects with JDS, but many of the shop projects, we really believe in using kind of historic materials, but using technology to fabricate, deliver, and assemble them in contemporary ways. And so the idea was to sort of make this pattern that radiated out from the bridge, sort of as this moment where it impacts the two folded skyscrapers, and create these two skins of copper. And so this was the sort of early rendering of what the two buildings would be like. And our idea was to use live copper that would be installed as a shiny penny, would patina to a kind of rich chocolatey brown, and then eventually, some of our favorite structures and sculptures in New York that are made of copper would go to Statue of Liberty green over time. Nobody knows how long it's going to take. We've heard everything from 15 to 50 years. This gives me something to live for, to see it turn green. But we are seeing some spots of it that are already starting to turn green just recently.
So conveniently, when we started this project, and I do mean conveniently, Hurricane Sandy came across New York. And it came across at just the right time, and that is right when we were buying the property, and it gave us a unique opportunity to see firsthand what coastal flooding can do to New York City. So this site was literally underwater when Hurricane Sandy came through. So what we did was we went around the entire table the first day of design to say, how did it impact you? And we talked to young people, old people, single people, married people who lost their car, who couldn't get to their home, who couldn't flush a toilet, who couldn't charge their phone, whatever the issues were. And we went through that entire checklist and solved every one of those problems. And we talk about resiliency and sustainability and how important they are. And we think they all cost so much, but really when you take these things in from the very first day of design, they're imminently achievable. So these are all things that are done at American Copper. So the entire basement as a start is completely waterproof. We actually have pumps in the basement. Should we ever get water in the basement, we'll actually be able to get it out, which is something that couldn't happen in Hurricane Sandy. So the entire foundation itself was made completely waterproof. This is 50 feet down into the East River water table, as I said, on reclaimed land in the first place. So the park itself is also designed to be as flood resilient as possible. So all the plant species are saltwater resistant, and all the bigger trees are actually anchored down. The root balls are physically tied down to the structure so that they can't be pulled up in the event of a flood. The park itself is also a bioswale that absorbs flood water. We actually used our storm detention tank system and put it underground in front of the building to take in any flood water as it was coming from the river as a first line of defense. All of our utilities, including our electrical service, are on the second floor. There's absolutely no mechanical systems in the basement whatsoever. And last, we have a generator plant at the top of the building. So what would be a penthouse apartment that should be going for the top of our underwriting is actually a 2 megawatt natural gas generator plant system. And by putting this in, we figured we were making every other square foot in the building that much more valuable. And we were happy to sacrifice this area. So in every single apartment, and these are our typical finishes, every refrigerator is on emergency power. Every kitchen has an emergency charging outlet for people's phones. All the pumps, all the elevators, the fire alarm system, all the basics are of course covered on the emergency power as well. And here we're in construction.
Yeah, I mean, having survived a couple of blackouts and then Sandy, we all sort of looked around and we were like, as a New Yorker, like if you have your elevator, your refrigerator, and you can charge your phone, you can sort of survive a week, no problem. So we were like, all right, let's just do that. So here you see the buildings going up. This was one of the first bridges built in New York in many decades, but was really one of the key elements. And the bridge, of course, has to align to the 4 different angles, so nothing on the bridge. It's a complete parallelogram and on all 6 sides going together. I made it very easy for you guys to build that one. But here you see the bridge from across, and then here you can see the sort of glass facades, and then as the copper makes the turn around the corner, and the bridge above and the way it looks, and you can see the patterning of the copper. And again, it's really moving into this kind of brown, beautiful copper color. And then here you can see the park that Kate Orff from Scape designed, and the entry into and sort of the trees blocking the FDR. But it's really right at the foot of a heliport, of a ferry terminal. And then again, working with K&Co and Shop, the idea of the sort of urban coast as a thought point or a takeoff point for the interior. What does that mean? But here you can see the lobby space as you come in. And then one of our favorite features was when we were doing the pool, we said this should really be kind of the great space. So we said we should put the pool on the bridge so that you can swim from one skyscraper to the other, 300 feet up in the air. And so if you look out to the right, it's floor-to-ceiling glass looking at the river, and if you look out to the left, you see the skyline of the city, and you can see both of those when you're in the water doing your laps. So it really kind of creates this new idea of what urban living on the waterfront could mean. We have 2-story high spaces. The amenity package is on the 28th and 29th floor, and so there are climbing walls, and we took one of the best spaces and made that the amenity space, so that even if you live on the 3rd floor sort of facing the FDR Drive, which you might say was the darkest apartment of all of them, everyone gets to share in these fantastic spaces high in the building. And we think that's an important part of building the community. And then this is the lounge space. This is the floor on the bridge as well. This is the floor above the pool. Again, you can see the river to one side, and the city is off to the left. So again, part of this great community space. All the kitchens were custom, and you can see the typical finish package. Now this is a rental building. This is not a condo building, and not only that, it has a 20% affordable housing component in it. And our client said, don't think about it because it's a rental trying to knock down the finishes. Don't think about it because it has affordable housing integrated into it. They said, just design the best apartments that you possibly can. So here you can see the sort of typical apartment in some of the finished areas. These are the bathrooms, all custom cabinetry, custom lighting, walk-in showers, slab stone. And then looking at the building from across the river. Whoops. Oh, I guess that was it. So, but I think that it's been a wonderful project. We haven't actually even photographed it yet. These are just sort of people taking pictures with their phones walking around, because we're just finishing the building at this point. But it's brought a lot of delight, and the building, interestingly, looks really sort of better. We designed it so that when you're moving by it, as Simon was speaking about, that the shifting of the folded planes really kind of comes to light. But we do know who goes to Long Island, because they're the people waiting to go through the Queens Midtown Tunnel, and they're always sort of texting us and saying, like, the building looks great, even though I'm stuck in traffic. It's been a fantastic project to work on. JDS has been an incredible client. Whatever we continue to challenge them both from an underwriting and a construction perspective. They've been unbelievable partners in trying to push what we could do with buildings and to try and make buildings that people love and take care of. You know, the most sustainable thing you can do is build architecture that people love and take care of, and it doesn't get renovated every 20 years, and that has great public space and is smart and sustainable, and that's really that kind of density brought to neighborhoods where there typically wasn't any, and putting it in buildings that are high quality, that patina and age gracefully, we think is really important, and is one of the most important things that we all as designers and developers and builders can give back to the city. So we feel unbelievably proud to have worked on a project like this. So with that said, congratulations to the other finalists. There are really 3 other great projects, and thank you very much for having us here in Chicago.